She looked him in the eyes, keyed the launch override, and left him to die. He was only a human escort, dropped on a dead rock with 36 elite assassins closing in, and the Kesserite princess who had bought him signed him away on a dented data slate as if she were closing out a bar tab. The warlord who took him counted the barter with 3 hands and decided he was worth exactly 1 field cannon, and a used one at that. But when the warlord came back 6 months later, expecting to bury a servant and collect a debt, he did not find a grave. He found a corridor stacked with the men who had come to kill his heir, a silver-robed corpse with an axe still lodged in her console, and a single human, breathing shallow, asking, with the patience of a man who had waited out worse winters, for a real cup of coffee. The air in Warlord Vek's cargo bay tasted of copper, burnt ozone, and old cooking grease. 6 hours before the assassins came, Silas Renner was sitting on a crate of ration cubes with his bad knee stretched in front of him, peeling the foil off a sugar packet he had pocketed on the transport. He was 41 years old. He had a face that looked slept in. His hair was going grey at the temples, in the uneven way of men who had spent time under bad lights, and there was a burn on the back of his left hand that a Kesserite medic would later stare at for a long time without saying anything. He was, at that moment, a night shift cook from a coal town in Pennsylvania. That was what the manifest said. That was what he told anyone who asked. Warlord Vek Kryn, whose true name was a burst of throat clicks the collar translator flattened to Vek, was on the other side of the bay screaming at a plasma coil. Vek had 4 amber eyes, 3 arms, and a mouth that opened sideways. He wore the black harness of a warlord of the fringe. He was, by any honest measure, terrifying. Right now, he looked like a man who had bought a used truck and discovered the engine was seized. "It will not fire," his quartermaster said. She was smaller than Vek, plated in the pale green chitin of her caste, and she was choosing her words the way a person chose stones to cross a river. "It fired once. Once. Yes. And now? Now it will not." Vek made a sound the translator did not bother to render. Silas Renner ate his sugar packet and watched the argument the way a man in a diner watched a slow fight in the parking lot. He did not stand up. His knee hurt. It had been hurting since the drop. The princess who had signed him away was named, in the trade tongue, Aesilé of the Long Water. She was very beautiful in the way that certain glaciers were very beautiful. When she had walked him across the tarmac to Vek's shuttle, she had not looked at his face. She had told the warlord, "He cooks, he fetches. He does not speak our sacred tongues, so he cannot be a spy." Then she had signed the slate, taken the cannon on a mag sled, and walked back to her yacht without turning around. Silas had watched her go. He had thought about the way she carried her shoulders. He had thought, "This one has killed people," and the killing did not stick to her. He had thought about that for a long time. He had not argued. He had not argued because his sister Merle still lived in the cold Pennsylvania town of his birth, in a 2-story house with a furnace that ran on heating oil, and the pay was going straight into her account. He had done the math on the transport. If he survived the trip and got back to Terra, the invoice would clear her winter and probably the next one. She was 58. She had never asked him for a thing. He planned to survive. That, in the end, was the whole plan. He was very good at plans that were shaped like that. The cannon on the mag sled coughed once and made a noise that was not a mechanical noise. It was the noise a piece of metal made when it decided it was done. A small blue flame bloomed inside the breach and went out. "2 shells, Vek said, in the flat voice a man used before he broke something. 2 shells. For this I gave up a soldier." "He is not a soldier, my lord. He is a domestic." Vek turned his head slowly, his 4 eyes lined up on Silas, the way the 4 eyes of certain deep-sea things lined up on prey. "Cook." Silas looked up. He tipped an imaginary cap. "Warlord. Do you know how to fix cannons?" "No, sir." "Do you know how to fix anything?" Silas considered. I can fix a stove. I can fix a bad clutch. I can fix a headache with the right coffee. That's about the range. The translator handled all of this. Vec listened, his mouth open sideways. He did not laugh because his species did not. But there was something in the amber of his eyes that a laugh would have filled. Then he made a gesture with his lower right hand and turned back to the cannon. Back to your crate, cook. Silas went back to his crate. He unwrapped a second sugar packet. He did not eat it. He held it in his fingers and watched the rafters. He had been watching the rafters since he came into the bay. That too was a habit. There were people in the world, human and otherwise, who walked into a room and located the exits. Silas Renner walked into a room and located the places from which a man could drop onto you. There were 3 such places in this bay. 2 were catwalks. The third was a maintenance duct with a grill that did not sit quite flush. For 6 hours he watched them, ate his sugar, listened to Vec argue with the cannon, and thought about the way Isali of the Long Water had carried her shoulders. The assassin dropped from the maintenance duct. He came fast. Kesserite assassins fell like water, without sound, and this one had a monomolecular blade in his upper hand and a scaled-down needler in his lower. He did not go for Vec, who was armored and armed and warned. He went for the child. Silas had not known about the child yet. He knew, because he was Silas, that a person who dropped from a duct with a blade at that angle was not aiming for the loud man by the cannon. He was aiming past. Silas turned his head without moving his body and saw a small door across the bay, half hidden behind a stack of crates, marked with a symbol he did not recognize but did not need to. Small doors that were hidden were always the same door in the end. He stood up. His knee did not thank him. He did not care. There was a length of loading pipe on the crate next to him, bent from a hard landing, the sort of pipe a stevedore had left because it was no longer straight enough to trust. He picked it up. It weighed about 6 kilograms. The bend was near the middle, which meant the ends would swing wide. He did not shout. He did not warn. He crossed the bay in 8 long steps. The Kesserite assassin was fast. Silas was not, but the assassin had been trained on soldiers who braced and soldiers who dodged, and Silas did neither. He walked in. He walked through the arc of the blade before the blade reached the top of its swing, because he had grown up under 1.6 Gs, and a man who had grown up under 1.6 Gs did not step back from anything, ever, because stepping back cost too much. He put the bent pipe up under the jaw, where the exoskeleton thinned, to feed the ear canal. He drove it up. The assassin's needler went off at the ceiling once, and then went silent. The exoskeleton cracked in a way that a chef would recognize. A pig's jaw cracked like that when you were breaking it down for head cheese. Silas held the pipe there for a long second, longer than he needed to, because he had learned, in a peacekeeping unit, no one was supposed to talk about, that a thing that seemed dead sometimes was not, and if you gave it back, its second the second was your last. The assassin was dead. Silas stepped back. He set the pipe down. He picked up the needler, checked the charge, checked the safety, and set it down too, because it was not his, and he did not like unfamiliar guns. Then he turned. Vector Kryn was staring at him. All 4 amber eyes were on him. The quartermaster had a plasma pistol in her hand, halfway drawn. She had not finished the draw. She was not going to. The bay was silent. The whole bay was silent in a way that only certain kinds of silence were. A silence the size of a room, deciding what had just happened. Silas rolled his shoulder. His knee hurt. His hands were shaking a little, which was fine. They always did after. That was ordinary. That was the body doing its work. "Sir," he said to Vec, "you've got a problem in your ductwork." Vec did not answer. Vec walked slowly 3 steps at a time until he was standing over the assassin. He looked down at the pipe. He looked at the way the pipe had gone in. His 4 eyes went the pale amber his species reserved for funerals. He spoke, at last, in a voice that had lost all its earlier heat. "Get me the medic. Get me the file on this human. Get me the ship's manifest. Get me the princess of the long water on the horn." "My lord," the quartermaster said, "the princess left orbit." "Then get me her wake, now." Silas sat back down on the crate. His knee thanked him. He picked up his second sugar packet. He ate it slowly. He watched the rafters. He had counted 3 drop points at the beginning. He now had a strong feeling there would be more. The ship's medic was a slight, blue-skinned Nari with 3 fingers on each hand and a translator that hissed slightly when she spoke. Her name, on the badge, was Maye. Vec gave her the pad with Silas's manifest file and told her to read. She read. She started in the crisp, professional voice a medic used for triage. She did not keep it long. "Renner Silas, human male, 41 standard years." Vec nodded. "Born," Mai said and paused. "Born on the colony world Halden's Reach, 1.6 gravities." The quartermaster made a small sound. The Kesserite plating of her cast was calibrated for 1G, sometimes less. 1.6 was a number that broke feet. It broke ankles. It broke over years the way a person walked. 12 seasons, Mae went on, as ships cook on the whaling vessel Cold Furnace off the ice moon of Verdis. The ice on Verdis, she added, and the medic in her could not help herself, presses so hard on a hull in winter that the hull sings. Sailors on those boats develop cochlear damage in the first season. He served 12. Vec's 4 eyes stayed on Silas. Silas on his crate was cleaning his fingernails with a splinter of packaging foam. "Peacekeeping unit," Mai said. "Designation redacted. Read what is not redacted. There is very little that is not redacted, my lord. Read it. Honorable discharge, 9 years of service, commendation for extraction of civilian non-combatants under sustained fire, commendation for—" She stopped. She looked up. "My lord, the unit designation is redacted, but the unit is listed as inactive." "So? So it is listed as inactive for the past 10 standard years, my lord. All personnel." Her 3 fingers were still on the pad. "All personnel." Meaning? "Meaning, my lord, that according to Terran records, this unit is composed of dead men." The bay went silent again. That was the second silence. Vec looked at Silas. Silas looked back. There was no arrogance in the look and no fear either. There was, Vec would later say to his oldest advisor, only the look of a man reading a menu. "Are you dead?" Vec asked. Silas said, "Not lately." "You served in a unit that is not permitted to exist." "I served," Silas said, "in a unit that people asked to do jobs they could not later admit to having asked. When the jobs were done, the paperwork was done in a certain way. It is easier to bury a dead man than to promote a living one." He shrugged one shoulder. It was the shoulder without the burn. Everybody eats better that way. Vec considered this. His mouth opened sideways, then he said, "And you were sold to me for a used cannon." "Yes, sir." "Do you know why?" Silas looked at him. "I have a guess." "Say it." "Not yet, sir." That, more than any of the other things, was what convinced Vekathor Kryn, Warlord of the Fringe, that he had bought something he did not deserve. Isolé of the Long Waters yacht did not answer the horn. Her wake showed her burning hard for the outer reaches on a heading toward no port. The quartermaster came back with the tracks and put them, without speaking, on the table in the wardroom. Vec, Ma'ai, the quartermaster, and Silas were the only people in the wardroom. Silas was drinking something the ship called coffee. It was not coffee. It was a bitter blue liquid the color of a bruise, and it tasted, he decided after 2 sips, like an ashtray that had been through a war. He drank it anyway. He had drunk worse. "She is not answering," Vec said, "because she does not intend to answer." "Yes, sir," the quartermaster said. She traded me a soldier for a cannon that does not fire. Yes, sir. Why? The quartermaster did not answer. Silas set down his cup. Because she needed to get me off her ship, and she needed to be seen doing it, and she needed the record to say she had done it in payment for a piece of hardware, so that when I was later found dead here on your rock, with 36 assassins of the Longwater Guild around me, it would look like a business transaction gone wrong, and not what it was. Vek's 4 eyes came around slowly. Which was? An execution. The wardroom was quiet. Whose? Not mine, Silas said. I was cargo. I was a distraction. She dumped me here because she needed the assassins to have a plausible reason to come to your ship. They will say they came for me. They will say the whole thing was a contract dispute. That will be the story. Nobody will care about a dead cook. He picked up the cup. He put it down again. But they did not come for me, sir. Not really. They came for whoever you have hidden behind that small door in the cargo bay. Vek did not move. Ma'e's 3 fingers twitched. The quartermaster's plating went a shade lighter, which was her species' version of pale. Silas said, "You do not need to tell me who it is. I do not care. I need to know how many people know that door is there." Vek said, 7. Then it is not 7 anymore. It is 8. Silas tapped himself on the chest with his thumb. And if I could see it, others can see it too. What is on the other side of that door, Warlord? Vek looked at the quartermaster. The quartermaster looked at the floor. My God, nephew, Vek said at last. The last living heir of the Kryn line. He is 9 standard years old. He is asleep in a berth behind that door because his mother is dead. And his aunt is dead, and his cousins were poisoned at a wedding 2 months ago, and I am, at this moment, the only living person he has left who is sworn to protect him. Silas nodded. He picked up the cup again. He looked into the bruise-colored coffee. Warlord, he said, I'm going to need a better weapon than a bent pipe. The manifest gave the guild a name Silas did not bother to remember. The guild was called in the traders' cant the Longwater, and its assassins were paid in staggered installments, 1 for the contract, 1 for the completion, 1 for the silence. The Princess Isolé had, according to the wake and the ledger the quartermaster pulled from a cracked relay, been paying installments for 6 standard months. The ledger had 35 names on it. 32 of them were crossed out. The 3 that remained were a cargo pilot in the belt, retired, who had once seen the princess speaking to a person she should not have been speaking to, a minor priestess on Kessary, half-blind, who had heard something at a temple gate she was not supposed to hear, and a child, listed only as KC Minor, protected Warlord's custody. Silas read the ledger. He put his thumb on the 3rd line. He said, "That is a coup." "Yes," Vek said. "Not a squabble, not a debt, a coup. She poisoned the wedding. She had the aunt taken. She has been walking a ledger for 6 months to make 35 witnesses go silent, and the last of them is the boy behind that door." "Yes." "Why does a princess of the Longwater want the Kryn line ended?" "Because with the Kryn line ended," Vek said, "the Kessary Council becomes 6 seats instead of 7. And 6 seats gives her house the majority for the first time in 11 generations. So it is politics." "It is always politics, Cook." Silas laughed. It was a short laugh. It did not have joy in it. It had instead the recognition of an old shape. "It's always politics, Warlord." "Yes, sir." Mae, who had been listening, said quietly, "My lord, if the guild is paying its installments in full, they will send everything they have. Not one drop team. All of them." "How many?" "They took 32 witnesses in 6 months. Their standing force is estimated at 160. If they commit even half." "They will commit all," Silas said. Mae looked at him. "How do you know?" Because the completion installment on a child heir is bigger than the completion installment on 32 grown witnesses combined. Nobody is home. They are all here, on this ship or on the way. Vec sat back, his 3 arms folded across his chest, his 4 eyes closed one at a time in the meditative gesture his species used to accept an unavoidable death. Then he opened all 4 at once and said, "How do we survive this, human?" Silas thought about it. "We do not," he said. "You do not survive 160 assassins on a ship this size, Warlord. Not with the guard you have, not with the corridors you have, not with the ductwork you have. The math is bad." Then we change the math." He set down his cup. "You," he said to the quartermaster, "give me the ship's schematic. Bulkhead by bulkhead, ventilation, power grid, every place a small man could go and a bigger man could not follow. You," to the medic, "give me every sedative in the store, every stim, every field kit. Do not ask me why." "You," to Vec, "take the boy and put him where I tell you to put him, not where you would have, where I say." Vec's mouth opened sideways. "You are giving orders to a warlord, Cook." "Yes, sir." Vec looked at him for a long time. Then he laughed in the honest amber way his species could not laugh but did anyway. "You are the strangest thing," he said, "that I have ever bought." The ship was called the Ashfall. It was a mid-size cutter, black-hulled, 3 decks, 1 engine block, 52 crew. It was designed to raid unarmored merchant halls, not to withstand a boarding by a professional guild. Silas walked it deck by deck and made small marks with a piece of chalk from the ship's galley on the bulkheads. The chalk was Terran. He had brought it in his kit out of habit. He had never gone anywhere in 20 years without chalk. He marked the intersections where 3 corridors met and a person could be flanked from 2 sides. He marked the doors that opened outward, because outward opening doors gave you the wall as a shield when you swung them. He marked the vents that fed the medbay, because the medbay had oxygen bottles, and oxygen bottles were, in a pinch, artillery. He marked the storage bay where the Ashfall kept the salvage crates it had taken off Terran wrecks, because Terran wrecks contained Terran things. In one of the crates, he found a fire axe. It was the kind of axe a shipyard put in a corridor for hull breaches. It had a red-painted head and a fiberglass haft and a rubber grip. It was scuffed. Someone had used it to pry open a hatch and then, embarrassed, put it back. Silas picked it up. He hefted it. He swung it once, easy, in a low figure 8, the way a butcher warmed his wrist before a shift. He said quietly, "Hello, old friend." He took it with him. He also took a length of copper cable, 4 canisters of the medbay's strongest sedative, a Terran crescent wrench of the sort used on high-torque coupling nuts, a pair of magnetic boots 2 sizes too big that he stuffed with rag, and a coil of monofilament fishing line from a smuggler's kit that had been sitting in the salvage bay for a decade. The quartermaster watched him work. "That is fishing line," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "For fish." "Yes, ma'am." "There are no fish on my ship." "No, ma'am, but there is going to be about 160 guests, and they are all going to want to move fast." The quartermaster looked at him. She looked at the fishing line. She looked at the axe. Something in her plating shifted color again, more slowly this time. "Cook," she said. "What did you do in that unit that does not exist?" Silas smiled. "I cooked, ma'am. Mostly, but sometimes the pantry ran low. The child was named Key-Kreen. He was small even by 9-year-old Kesserite standards, with the pale green plating of a young of his caste and 4 eyes that had not yet learned to line up cleanly on a single thing. He held a stuffed toy in one lower hand. The toy was, Silas noted with a strange pang, shaped roughly like an earth dog. The boy looked at him and asked, in a small, clicking voice the translator rendered evenly, "Are you the human?" "Yes, sir." "Uncle says you are going to keep me alive." "I'm going to try, sir." "He says the bad men are coming." "They are, sir, but I'm going to be between you and them." The boy considered this. His 4 eyes narrowed the way a boy's would when he was working out whether an adult was lying to him. Then he said, "Uncle says you fight with a pipe." "I did, sir, once. It was the pipe that was available." "Do you have a better one now?" "Yes, sir." "Show me." Silas showed him the axe. He turned it in the light so the boy could see the red head and the rubber grip and the edge. The boy touched the haft with one careful finger. "It looks old." "It is." "Is old better?" "Sometimes." "Why?" "Because old things," Silas said, "have already broken a couple of times, and they know how to hold on now." The boy considered this too. Then he said, "I want to go home." Silas crouched. His knee complained. He set the axe down against the wall and put his hands on his own knees. "Do you know," he said, "what my sister's name is?" "No. Her name is Merle. She lives in a cold place on a planet called Earth. It snows there, not always, sometimes. When it snows, the roads get white, and she puts salt on the front steps, and she puts the salt in a bucket by the door. And every time she comes in from outside, she leaves a wet track on the floor. She is 58. She has never asked me for anything in her whole life. Right now she is in her kitchen, and she is drinking tea, and she does not know that I have been sold to your uncle for a cannon, and she does not know that a lot of people are coming here to try to hurt you. She does not know any of that. She is just drinking her tea." The boy watched him. "I want," Silas said, "to go back to her house. I want to sit at her kitchen table. I want to drink a cup of her coffee, which is real coffee and not what you people drink. I want to watch the snow through the window. I want that very much. Do you know what that means, sir?" "No." "It means I am going to be very, very hard to kill tonight, because I have a place I am going. Do you understand?" The boy did not entirely, but something in his 4 small eyes clicked into a line for the first time, and he said quite seriously, "You may borrow my toy if it helps." Silas laughed. It was a good laugh. It surprised him. "You keep the toy," he said. "That toy is your job. If a bad man comes, you throw the toy at his face and you run behind me." "Yes, sir," the boy said. Silas stood. He picked up the axe. He tucked the fishing line into his belt. He said, "Warlord." Vec, in the doorway, said, "Cook, put the boy in the port maintenance chase, 3rd deck behind the water tank. It is the smallest space on this ship, and the last place a professional would look, because the first place they would look for a hidden royal is the throne room, and the second place is the vault, and the third place is a stateroom disguised as a closet. Nobody hides a 9-year-old behind a water tank." Water tank. Warm, loud. Kids do not scream when it is warm and loud. They sleep. Also, if it comes to it, water is a shield. 20 centimeters of water will stop most needler rounds. Vec looked at him. His 4 eyes were doing something. Silas did not know what it was. "Cook," Vec said. "When you cooked in that unit that does not exist, what did you cook?" "Mostly stew, sir." "Stew. Stew, sir. It kept." Vec made his sideways smile. "Stew," he said. "Yes. All right, cook. Stew it is." The assassins came at the 3rd watch, which was the middle of the ship's night, which was, Silas had known, when they would come, because professionals came at the 3rd watch. They cut power to the main lights first. The ashfall dropped into the red of its emergency strips. They came, per Mai's estimate, in 3 waves. The first wave was a diversion, 12 of them on the port side, cutting through the outer hull with plasma torches like students opening a can. They made noise. They wanted noise. Vex guards ran to meet them because Vex guards were good, and good soldiers ran to the sound. The second wave came in silence, through the ductwork, in the exact 3 points Silas had marked with chalk 6 hours before. There were 40 of them. Silas met the first 10 in the corridor that led to the medbay. He had strung the corridor with fishing line at 3 heights: ankle, knee, and throat. The line was monofilament, invisible in the red emergency light. It did not need to cut. It only needed to catch. They came in fast. The first 3 went down at the ankle. The next 2, going faster because they saw their comrades fall, took the knee line and pitched forward. The 5 behind them, professional enough to jump the fallen, hit the throat line at full stride. 2 lost their weapons. 1 lost her balance and came down on her own blade. The other 2 spun, disoriented, and Silas came out of the medbay's side door with the fire axe. He did not swing wide. Wide was for movies. Wide left you exposed. He worked short, close, the way a man broke down a carcass in a walk-in cooler, finding the seam. He found the hinge in the armor where the plating overlapped at the hip. He found the joint where the neck met the shoulder. He found the soft place under the chin that every armored species had, because every species had to eat. He took a round through the meat of his shoulder. He kept moving. Under 1.6 Gs, you learned early that if you stopped, you fell, and if you fell, you stayed. So you did not stop. He did not stop. He took a second round through the same shoulder. He felt the bone go hairline, not through. He did not stop. He took a slash across the ribs that opened his shirt and his skin, and did not, thank God, open the muscle wall. He kept going. He took the last of the 10 of them at the medbay door and left the axe standing in the wall beside her because he did not have a hand free to pull it out. He limped back into the medbay. Ma-I was there. Her 3 fingers were already moving before he sat down. "Stapler," he said. "Just the stapler. You need proper repair. I need to be able to walk. Give me the stapler." She gave him the stapler. It was a medical stapler, the sort used for closing wounds in the field, and it hissed when it fired. He did his own shoulder, 2 staples, quick, into the meat above the bullet track. He did his own side. 3 staples along the slash. He did not use anesthetic. He did not have time. He grunted once, low. Ma-I watched him with her 3-fingered hands hanging. "You do that," she said, "as if you have done it before." "I have." "How many times?" Silas thought about it. "Enough." He got up. His shoulder complained. His side complained. His knee complained loudest of all, which was almost restful, because the knee complained even on good days. He pulled the axe out of the wall on the way past. "Where next?" Ma-I asked. "Down. There are still 30 of them in the vents." 30. 30 was the second wave. The third wave will come once they think we have shot our load. That is when the ambassador will step off the shuttle. The ambassador. Whoever is really running this. Not the princess. The princess is dead already. Ma-I blinked all 3 of her eyes. "How do you know?" "Because a princess who has been paying installments for 6 months does not run for the outer reaches on the day the last installment comes due. She runs because she is afraid, and she is afraid because she has served her purpose, and she is dead within a day of that wake." Silas rolled his shoulder. It hurt in a shape he recognized. "She was a stalking horse. Somebody else is on the way." Ma-I stared. "You," she said, "are terrifying." "No, ma'am," Silas said. "I'm tired. Get out of the way." He went down. The second wave, all 30 of them, came in the port ventilation trunk. They did not know that Silas had spent the 4 hours before the third watch rerouting the medbay's oxygen supply into that trunk, and that he had spent 30 minutes with the crescent wrench and a stripped copper cable turning the trunk's emergency lighting into a spark gap. They did not know it until they were halfway through. He threw the switch from the corridor. The trunk went up in a whomp that was less an explosion than a very hard cough. It was oxygen-rich air. It was not a bomb. It was a fire contained inside a metal tube, and the tube was full of assassins. The whoomp travelled the length of the trunk. It came out at both ends in a soft blue flash, and a smell that was, Silas noted grimly, exactly the smell of a chicken coop that had gone up in a January barn fire when he was 9. He was not proud of it. He had done it because it was the math. 19 of them came out of the trunk alive, on fire, and disoriented. He killed most of those with the axe as they crawled out of the vents. 2 he did not kill. He kicked them down with his bad knee screaming, cuffed them to a pipe with the copper cable, and left them for Vek's people to sort out later. The 2 he cuffed were not, he noticed, in guild colors. They were in Kesserite house colors. House colors he did not recognize. He filed that away. He went up. Vek met him on the 3rd deck stairwell. Vek had a plasma pistol in each of his upper hands, and blood on his lower one, and a cut on the side of his skull that had gone the color his species' blood went, which was a dark, syrupy green. "Cook," he said, "there is a shuttle. It has just made contact with the port dorsal hatch. It bears diplomatic seals." "Silver robes." Vek's 4 eyes fixed on him. "How did you know?" "Because that is who is running this, sir. That is the ambassador I was talking about. Do you know her name? There is a Kesari ambassador to the Fringe who has been in the post for 11 years. Her name is Halayan of the Still Room. She is—" He paused. "She is above suspicion." "No, sir. She is above suspicion because she has arranged for herself to be above suspicion. That is not the same. Where is she now?" "On the shuttle, requesting parley." "She will not parley. She is coming to be sure. She wants to see the boy dead herself so she can testify to the council that the Kryn line is ended." "Where is the boy?" "Where you said." "Good." Silas rolled his shoulder. He looked down at his side. The staples were holding. He was bleeding under his shirt in a way that would matter in an hour and did not matter now. "Sir," he said, "you need to go to the parley." "I need to go to the parley." "Yes, sir. You need to be exactly where she thinks you are going to be. Take your quartermaster, take your guard, meet her at the port dorsal, be angry, be confused, be a warlord who has just been boarded and does not understand why. Ask her for aid. Do not, under any circumstances, let her pass the airlock into the throne room." "The throne room is empty." "Yes, sir, that is exactly the point." Vek's 4 eyes narrowed. "Where," he said, "will you be, cook?" Silas smiled. It was a tired smile, and there was blood on his teeth. "I will be," he said, "in the throne room, because that is where the 3rd wave is coming." The throne room of a warlord of the Fringe was not a throne room in the sense a human would use the word. It was a working room. It had a chair, yes, and the chair was raised on a dais, but it also had a console, 3 planning tables, a wall of tactical screens, and a rack of dress weapons that Vek had almost never touched. It had 1 door out, which was the door Vek would come through. It had 1 door in, which was the door leading directly, by a short corridor, to the port dorsal shuttle bay. Silas had, in the 4 hours between his conversation with Vek and the 3rd watch, spent 40 minutes in this room with the crescent wrench and the fishing line and a can of cooking oil from the galley. He had also removed the chair. There was nothing on the dais now but the console. The console was open and a data slate was propped up on it, playing a looped recording of a small clicking Kesserite child voice, warm, sleepy, and slightly frightened. The recording had been made 20 minutes ago in the water tank chase at Silas's instruction. Kryn had said into the mic exactly what Silas had told him to say, which was, "Uncle, Uncle, I want out." It was a very good recording. The ambassador Halayan of the Still Room came through the shuttle bay door 40 seconds after Silas had settled himself into the shadow of the weapons rack. She came in silver robes. Her outer robe was the color of a moon. Her inner robe was the color of an eclipse. She wore at her throat a small pendant in the shape of the Kessari Council seal, and she carried, in one lower hand, a delicate blade that no diplomat had any business carrying. Behind her came 10 of her personal guard. Not guild, house, same colors as the two he had cuffed downstairs. She did not look surprised to be in the throne room. She did not look surprised that the chair was gone. She looked, above all, patient, the way a person looked when they had been running a plan for a very long time and were about to see the last piece drop. She heard the recording. Her three-fingered hand tightened just slightly on the little blade. "Kai?" she said, low in her own tongue. She stepped forward. She stepped into the cooking oil. She was too experienced to fall. She caught her balance almost at once, one hand out, one foot going forward and back. Her guards, coming in behind, were not so experienced. Three of them went down at once. One took the fishing line at the ankle, one took the fishing line at the knee, one caught the throat line and pitched into her. She turned, elegant, and looked up, because Silas Renner had already stepped out of the shadow of the weapons rack. Her eyes went to him. Then to his shoulder, which was bleeding through the staples. Then to the axe in his left hand and the little needler in his right, which was the needler he had taken off the first assassin 6 hours before in the cargo bay. Her elegant face did something that Kesserite faces were not supposed to do. It moved. "You are not supposed to be here," she said. "No, ma'am," Silas said. "Where is the child?" "Behind 20 centimeters of water, ma'am. You are not going to reach him, not tonight, not ever." "You are one man," she said low. "There are 10 of us." "7 of you now, ma'am." Line took the 3. Silas nodded at the tangled shapes on the floor. His voice was very level. It was the voice he used when he was, in his own private assessment, most tired. "And I am not one man. I am one man plus this ship. I am one man plus 160 of your assassins, who are, at this moment, mostly dead in the vents. I am one man, plus the 2 of your house guard I have downstairs handcuffed to a pipe, who are right now being asked politely by the Warlord's quartermaster to name the person who wrote their check. Do you know what that person's name is going to be, ma'am?" Helene of the still room did not answer. "It is going to be yours, ma'am." She looked at him for a long time. Then she said low, "You are a Terran cook." "Yes, ma'am. You have no standing in this. You have no right to interfere with the succession of a Kesari house." "No, ma'am." "Then why?" Silas thought about it. He thought about it with real care, because the answer mattered to him. "Because you sent people to kill a 9-year-old, he said, "and I do not like it when people do that. And because I was sold to a warlord for a cannon that jammed, and I do not like that either. And because my sister's name is Merle, and she lives in a cold town on a planet called Earth, and she pays her heating bill by the 15th of every month, and you and yours were going to make that difficult for her, ma'am, by making sure I did not come home. And I do not like that either." He tilted his head. "Also," he added, "you scared the boy. He is 9. Nobody should scare a boy of 9. Helene of the still room looked at him with 3-fingered contempt and 1-fingered fear. She raised the little blade. She said, "You will not fire that needler. If you fire, I invoke ambassadorial immunity and this ship burns for a diplomatic incident." "I am aware of that, ma'am." Then I'm not going to fire the needler." He set the needler down on the dais. He hefted the axe. She was 3 meters away. Her 7 guards were behind her, disentangling. She had a hair-width blade in her hand and centuries of house training in her shoulders. He had a fire axe he had taken out of a Terran salvage crate that morning, a bad knee, a hairline fracture in his shoulder, 3 staples in his side, and a plan. He walked. She met him in the middle. She was fast, faster than any of the assassins had been, faster than anything Silas had fought in 10 years. The little blade licked past his cheek and took a slice out of his ear. It licked past his ribs and took a rib. It went for his eye and he ducked at the last, so it took his forehead and opened a red curtain down his face. He kept walking. Under 1.6 Gs, you learned that stopping cost too much. He did not swing wide. He swung short. He brought the axe up under her elbow and turned the little blade out of true. He brought it down on the console beside her, cutting the diplomatic relay in half, cutting the payment channel through which the guild's completion installment was, at that moment, on its way. The little clicking noise the console made as it died was, he thought, the most honest sound the ambassador had made in a decade. She screamed. It was not a diplomat's scream. It was a warlord's. It was the scream of a woman who had been running a plan for a very long time and had just watched the last piece not drop. He did not kill her. He had thought about it in the 4 hours before the third watch. He had decided in the end not to. He needed her alive. Vec needed her alive. The Kasari Council, whether they knew it or not, needed her alive. He hit her once, hard, with the flat of the axe in the temple. She dropped. She lived. He turned to her 7 guards, who were still trying to get out of the fishing line, and he said, in a voice that was, he later discovered, very calm, "Down, now, on the floor. I will not ask twice." They went down. He put his axe against the wall. Then his bad knee gave out, and he sat down on the dais hard and could not get back up. That was where Vector Kreen, Warlord of the Fringe, found him 30 seconds later, when he came through the far door with his plasma pistols still smoking. Silas was sitting on the dais with his back to the console, one hand pressed to his side, the other hand shaking a little on the haft of the axe. The ambassador Halin of the still room was on the floor at his feet, alive, unconscious, silver robes soaked with cooking oil. Vec crossed the throne room in 5 long strides. He knelt beside Silas. He put one lower hand under Silas's arm. "Cook," he said, "Warlord, you are bleeding." "Yes, sir." "You will die." "Not tonight, sir, just tired. Give me a minute." Vec looked at the ambassador. He looked at the wrecked console. He looked at the 7 guards on the floor. He looked, at last, at Silas. His 4 amber eyes were doing something. Silas did not know what it was. "Cook," Vec said, "what do you want?" Silas looked up at him. His face was a mask of blood. His shoulder was going stiff. His side hurt in a shape he recognized. He was very tired. He said, "I want a real cup of coffee." Vec waited. "I want 3 weeks off." Vec waited. "I want someone else to file the paperwork, because I do not, and I have never done paperwork." Vec waited. "And I want, sir, on the record right now, in front of your medic and your quartermaster when they get up here, that Silas Renner does not and will not ever at any price wash windows." Vec looked at him for a very long time. Then his mouth opened sideways. "Cook," he said, "you will have your coffee. You will have your 3 weeks. I will file the paperwork myself in my own hand on the tablet of my house, and no one on any ship I command until the day I die will ever ask you to wash a window." "Thank you, sir." Vec stood. He looked down at Silas. "Also, Cook," he said quietly, "you are not for sale. Not anymore. Not to anyone. Not for any cannon. Not for any fleet. Not for any world. Do you understand me?" Silas closed his eyes. "Yes, sir." "Good." Vec turned. He walked to the door. He paused there. He looked back over his lower shoulder. "Cook." "Sir?" "What was in the stew?" Silas laughed. It hurt his ribs. He laughed anyway. "Potatoes, sir. Mostly potatoes." "Potatoes. They keep." Vec's mouth opened sideways once more, and he was gone. They took Silas to the medbay on a stretcher, because his knee had at last decided it was done with him. Mae worked on him for 2 hours. She took out the staples and put in proper sutures. She flushed the bullet track. She rebroke and set the hairline in his shoulder. She stitched his ear. She stitched his forehead. She stitched his side. She did not say much while she worked. Once in the middle, she paused with her 3 fingers on the wound in his shoulder and said softly in her own tongue something the translator refused to render. Silas looked at her. What did you say? I said, Mahe said, that I did not know a man could look at what you have looked at and still ask for coffee. Silas thought about it. Ma'am, he said, if you cannot look at what I have looked at and still ask for coffee, then what you have looked at wins, and I do not personally care to let it. She stared at him. She finished the stitching in silence. They put him in a berth. They put a real cup of coffee on the tray beside the berth. It had been sent up by Vek's order from a cache the Warlord had apparently been keeping in his private stores for 11 years, waiting for a person who deserved it. It was, Silas discovered, actual coffee. It was a dark roast. It was hot. It was black. He drank it. He did not cry. He was not the sort of man who cried. But he sat in the medbay of a warlord's ship in the fringe, with a bandage on his face and a splint on his shoulder, and a 9-year-old alien boy asleep in a berth beside him, and he drank a real cup of coffee for the first time in 7 standard months, and something in his chest that had been holding on very tight for a very long time loosened and did not tighten back. He slept. He slept for 18 hours. When he woke, the quartermaster was standing by his bed with a data slate. She looked at him without expression, which was her caste's version of concern. "Renner," she said. "Ma'am, the ambassador Halayan of the still room has confessed. The Kesari Council has convened. 2 of her house have already been taken into custody. The child is safe. The Princess Isolé of the Long Water was found dead in her yacht at the outer reaches. She had been dead for 6 standard hours. Warlord Vek has been asked to sit as regent for Kikrin until the boy's majority." "Good. The council has also asked formally whether you would consider a title. Any title. Your pick." Silas thought about it. "No, ma'am. They will be offended. They will get over it. Payment then, any sum. The 3 weeks off, the coffee, the paperwork, that was the deal, ma'am." She looked at him. "You could name a moon, Renner." "I do not want a moon, ma'am." "You could have a fleet." "I do not want a fleet, ma'am. I want a plane ticket, and I want it to say on the return leg, 1 seat, cook class, to a small airport in western Pennsylvania, and I want it in 3 weeks." The quartermaster stared. "Cook class," she said. "Yes, ma'am. There is no such thing as cook class." "There is where I am going, ma'am." She looked at him for a long time. Then, without a word, she turned and left. Silas drank the last of his coffee. The boy, Kikrin, was watching him from the next berth. He had the stuffed dog under his lower arm. His 4 eyes were, at last, aligned on one thing. "Silas," he said. "Sir, Uncle says you did not want a moon." "I did not, sir." "Why?" "Because I already have a sister with a house on Earth, sir, and 1 house is enough for 1 man." Kikrin thought about it. "Silas, sir, when you go home, tell your sister Merle that the boy at the water tank said thank you." Silas looked at him. He said very quietly, "I will, sir." Somewhere on a colder world, in a 2-story house on the edge of a Pennsylvania coal town, a woman named Merle Renner was sitting at her kitchen table drinking tea and looking through her mail. It was Tuesday. It was, she noticed, grey outside. The tree in the front yard had lost the last of its leaves. There was a bill in the mail from the heating oil company. She opened it because she opened all bills the day they came in, and she had a small envelope of cash in the drawer for exactly this bill because the furnace had been eating oil since October. The bill said, in the top right corner, in the friendly font the heating company used for its statements, "Paid in full. Do not remit." She stared at it. She turned it over. It said, on the back, that a wire transfer had cleared from an account she did not recognize, on a date 2 days before, for the full amount of her winter estimate, and, in fact, for the full estimate for the following winter as well. She set down her tea. She sat in her kitchen for a while, with the paid bill in her hand, in the grey light of a Tuesday in a coal town, And she did not know yet why. She did not know yet that her younger brother, whom she had not seen in 7 months and had not really understood since he was 19, was, at that moment, on a medical bunk on a warlord's ship in a place she could not have found on any map, drinking a real cup of coffee with a 9-year-old alien boy asleep beside him and a fire axe leaning against the wall by the door. She did not know yet that a warlord of the fringe had, 3 days before, sworn on the tablet of his house that the man who had bought her winter would not, at any price, ever again be sold. She did not know any of that. She just sat and drank her tea, and after a while she smiled at nobody, at the empty kitchen, at the grey Tuesday, and she said softly to the paid bill in her hand, "Silas." That was all, just his name, as if she were answering a question she'd been asked a long time ago and had almost, but not quite, forgotten. Outside, the first snow of the season began, quietly, to fall. What a ride. The real weapon is never the gun in your hand. It is the person you are going home to and the fact that you refuse to make them worry. If this story moved you, drop a like on the video. That is what keeps stories like this one alive on this channel. Share it with someone who also loves sci-fi, where the underestimated human turns out to be the most dangerous thing in the room. Hit subscribe and tap the bell so you do not miss the next big HFY tale we drop. And leave us a comment with your honest answer. If a warlord offered you a fleet, a moon, or a title, would you take the offer? Or would you ask, like Silas did, for 3 weeks off and a real cup of coffee? Say it in the comments. We read them. Keep your eyes on the empty dark out there and keep looking up at the stars.